Hello, Divine Ones. This is Ashley. Divination and the Bible. Is it really wrong? Hey, you guys, this is Ashley once again for Fueling the Flame podcast, a sector of FD 1111 Ministries. Like I was saying before, we're getting into the divination practices mentioned in the biblical text. Yes, that's right, in the Bible. For all of those people that have came to you when you started your journey of mystic studies, of occult knowledge, of tarot cards, of horoscopes, all of that stuff like that have been down your throat, or even if you have felt guilty about it, let's dive into the real meaning behind divination and what the biblical text as well as other texts say about divination. Coming from a Bible-believing background, the common ideal of any form of mystic or occult knowledge was a huge no-no. As I continued on my spiritual evolution, however, I couldn't ignore my call for the mystic and occult studies. So I continued to dig deep for the real answers of the questions that could not be answered by other individuals. With that being said, I got into the divination practice of tarot reading. What does the Bible really say about divination? I think first we need to establish what the biblical text is. The biblical text is a book of energy and mastering one's self. The entire biblical text was written for and by light workers, by divine individuals. So with that being said, that many times that these texts, these ancient texts that are written by certain individuals are placed in the hands of individuals of a lower vibrational understanding of things, and they may even take the text literal, or they may completely misunderstand the symbology and the real golden information that is hidden in the lines of the text. So with these different translations, with these different interpretations, that a lot of the information is lost. Real quick, I just wanted to say, if you want to follow along with this video and even gain more information at a deeper, higher level, the blog post is up, www.fd11-11ministries.org, and the blog post is a little more in depth with a little more information than what I'm going to cover on this video. So first, I wanted to jump into the breastplate of judgment. So there's a common theme throughout the text, throughout all religions, about judgment and about having the heart or the conscious mind weighed against pretty much like a feather, if you will, or if they don't use the ideal of a feather, is of having this form of universal judgment that someone has to stand in agreement with some type of law, like the laws of nature, the laws of men. And so with the breastplate of judgment, this is sort of the same type of ideal. However, the breastplate of judgment mentioned in the biblical text is more so of a divination tool. But the way how majority of individuals explain judgment, and especially this divination tool, they try to make it seem like it's clear cut, right or wrong. You have to do this or do that. And as well, we'll link below in the description box the video / podcast about the 10 commandments, and I broke those 10 commandments down. So the breastplate of judgment is very similar to the tarot card of the Chariot, and I have displayed on a screen, or either if you're following along on the blog post, I have the tarot card, and then I have the breastplate of judgment and the ephod. And I go over the details of the ephod and the breastplate of judgment, the yearning and the 𝐓𝐿, and those are represented by the black and white sphinx. So we're talking about balance. We're talking about, that's what judgment really is. It's about going from one extreme to the other extreme of the spectrum and finding that balance in between. That's what judgment is really about. And so with the Sphinx, the black and the white, we're talking about balance and finding that middle ground, very similar to the High Priestess card. And with the breastplate of judgment, the breastplate of judgment actually, it represents a frequency. And it was a breastplate that the high priests would put on and they would wear to have more protection and connectivity to the ethers and receive certain type of information. So they had 12 precious stones that represents each tribe of the 12 tribes of Israel. And with each one of those 12, it represents a frequency, 12, the 12 tribes, 12 and 12, 144, the frequency of love light. Only the high priests, so the high priests were one tribe of the 12 tribes, and this is very closely related to the one, actually they represent the 1.4 percenters, those individuals that have a higher level of love light frequency and a higher vibrational state of understanding. So when they would put on their priestly garments, these priestly garments were actually divination tools. So I will further explain this. So the ephod is a linen garment woven with 28 strands of blue, scarlet, purple, and gold, embroidered in pure gold, elaborate symbols and sigils of some sort. Exodus 28:30, the high priest Aaron, Moses' brother. The ephod was instrumental in deciding the territory boundaries amongst the tribes, as well as other boundaries. And each one of these stones contained a certain frequency, a certain vibrational energy with them. Some of the Talmudic rabbis would agree that the translation of the word yearning means light. Some studies, now there's different translations of this word, and so with this specific set of the rabbis, they would mostly agree that the translation means lights, and this is talking about along the lines of that breastplate. And with these lights would shine out of the certain jewels of the breastplate, and they represented the 22 letters of the Hebrew alphabet. The sequence of lights would spell out an answer or a phrase to a question. The jewels carried such a high vibrational energy that some say that they will move on their own to form groups of letters to spell out an answer to a specific question. Now, the tradition of the Urim and the Thummim describes a form of cleromancy, a form of casting lots. And inside of the breastplate contain cryptic words written on the inside of the sacred breastplate. So we're talking about using sigils, and with these signs and symbols, they were all to connect with the power within divinatory item, to connect with the ethers, to connect with the divine, to have the information come down in a certain pattern. You have from the divine, the throne of thrones, if you will, to the Christos energy, to the higher self, funneled down from the higher self, predicated upon the psyche or the conscious or the vibrational state of the individual. So that's why a lot of the priests would wear a lot of these high vibratory items on them. They took a great deal of precision. If you go through the biblical text, it's a lot of numbers and a lot of numerology, a lot of measurements, because all of this stuff is talking about angles, aka angels, energies that they're opening themselves up to. With the divination tool cleromancy, aka casting lots, that this can be seen in the example of 1 Samuel 14:41. As well as in 1 Samuel 10:22 and 2 Samuel 5:22, with simple answers or questions that would produce a yes or no answer. In instances where a person needed a specific answer, what they would do, they would go to the high priest, and then they would put their request into the high priest. The high priest will go into the Holy of Holies, which is nothing but like the higher levels of consciousness. So you will have the tabernacle. The tabernacle would be the representation of the physical body, if you will, and the Holy of Holies would be the representation of the pineal gland in the physical. And so basically taking this from another understanding, a person will come to another person, aka the high priest, represented by the tabernacle, and then they will present their question to the priest, and the priest would go into the Holy of Holies, aka going into their third eye, and they have the high vibrational state because of the garments that they have and how sacred those garments are. And when they would go into the Holy of Holies, they will receive the answer by using divination tools like 𝐬𝐓𝐇𝐄𝐑, like the urim and thummim. They would use candles as well to receive different types of answers. And most of the common answers were like a simple yes or no, like should I do this or should I not do this. And there are other instances where the high priest will receive a whole long message from the ethers, if you will, and that will come through the breastplate of righteousness, how I was saying, like with those lights. It's one way of how they would receive information. Other forms of biblical divination, represented by the Page of Cups, hydromancy, reading patterns in liquid. Among the accepted means of divination are prophets and seers of God. One form of light workers, Deuteronomy 18:14-22, 1 Samuel 9:6, 2 Kings 3:11. Leclamancy and hydromancy, reading patterns in liquid. Genesis 44:5, in reference to Joseph, the ruler. So Joseph was a dreamer as well, and he used the divination tool of oneiromancy. Hopefully I'm pronouncing that correctly, but it is the interpretation of dreams. Genesis 37-50. Genesis 37:5-9, Daniel as well, and many other prophets. Bilomancy, the casting or shooting of arrows. And these arrows, they didn't have like a head to them, and they didn't have feathers on them, but they were more like rods. That's 2 Kings 13:15-19, and astrology, Isaiah 47:13, Jeremiah 10:2. Now, another thing about the astrology, we know about the North Star. That's probably like the most common one that people make reference to, about the three wise men, aka the three initiates, that follow the North Star to the birth of the Christ in the physical, the manifested Christ, aka Jesus, aka Yahushua. Other instances of astrology is the morning star, both made reference to as far as being Venus. It's another example of Saturn in the biblical text. I don't have that one offhand right now. Another thing, testing God. Now, I've heard this before from when I was younger. You should not test God. Don't test God. However, Gideon, Judges 6:36-40, he tested God. He received information from, it says either a man or an angel, and then it was another confirmation, and then for a third confirmation, he asked God a specific divinatory action. Islam and divination. So representing this bilomancy would be the Eight of Wands. And so the Eight of Wands is pictured with rods or wands or staffs coming towards the individual or in the air, which typically means like messages coming in. And this is the art or the divination of casting or shooting arrows, like I mentioned before. An ancient Islamic practice, bilomancy, was the casting or shooting of arrows, usually no feathers or no arrowhead. Similar to the Holy of Holies mentioned in the biblical text, encased in Kaaba, hopefully I'm pronouncing that correct, forgive me if I'm not, a building at the center of the great mosque of Mecca. One would come to the guardians with a question. They necessarily did not have to state the question to the guardian, but the guardian would take a random staff out of a sacred container, and they would shoot the rod, and depending on what the statement was engraved on the rod was the answer, and it was considered to be the direct answer from the great divine, from God or from Allah. Christians, or in the biblical text, this is also made reference to of this type of practice. And so Jonah, when he was on the boat and there was a storm, and the workers on the boat, they was like, surely someone has sinned against the Heavenly Father or against the highest form of consciousness, and they casted lots. And so the casting of lots is two different types of ways. So you can break off stems of a broom, for example, or sticks, and whoever has the shortest or the longest stick, depending on how the way you want to do it, would be the individual that has the blame against them, or will be the individual that has to do a specific task. Another way of casting arrows or shooting arrows or casting lots would be how I was saying with the bibliomancy, where they would, actually shoot it in the air. Specifically, with tarot cards originated in northern Italy. The oldest surviving set was created for a duke around 1440. And so there goes that number again, 144. So this form of divination obviously was not around in the biblical times. The arts of tarot reading is called cartomancy, which is categorized as a form of divination or fortune telling using cards. Another thing about the 𝐕𝐈𝐃𝐄𝐒 and 𝐃𝐈𝐕𝐈𝐋 is that in some of the writings it's described as almost like dice, if you will. That's the best way of how I can describe it, as a modern example, where there are two stones that are kept and attached to the inside of the breastplate, and the high priest would have a question, and they would almost like roll them around in their hands and cast them out to see what answer would come, or either they would randomly, because it will be like the same shape and size, touch one, and then they will bring it out, and I guess they will have a different color or something different about the stone. That's one way of how has been described, and that's like mentioned in the Mormon text, Joseph Smith. Now, what does the biblical text mean when they say that you should not practice witchcraft and you should not practice sorcery? Now, witchcraft and sorcery, that's a little different. The one common thread that I found throughout the biblical text, throughout other religious ideals, is that with these practices, this is all dedicated for the higher level of consciousness. So it's not more so for personal gain, it's more so to lead individuals into self-mastery. For example, when you had the high priest, these were ordained individuals. They were not just dependent on these tools. Now, they knew that the source of the answers came from a higher realm of consciousness. And this is also the reason why only certain individuals or are ordained to practice certain types of divination, actually divination period, because of the emotional state. Now, emotions, energy emotion, a lot of individuals are not in self-mastery. They are reliant on outside experience instead of inside experience and knowledge. And so this is the reason why it has been banned. And it only can be practiced by certain individuals that are emotionally stable, that are psychologically stable, that have been ordained from a higher power for this practice. Now, you will have individuals that are not energetically in alignment, and they will go from reader to reader, or they will go from spell, and then they want to take the spell away because now they have changed their mind. They're not emotionally and psychologically stable. That's the reason why it has been frowned upon, and that's the reason why for certain individuals, when you really go through the biblical text, it's not completely banned, but it is banned amongst the masses, if you will. There's other forms of divination, such as divination using entrails, divination using bones, divination using clouds, the reading of clouds, the reading of lightning in the atmosphere, in the ethers, the plasma. There's divination using nature. There's different forms of divination. It's all around us. And so the purpose of divination is to take what is in the ethers, take what is from the heavenly realms, and bring it into the 3D experience to use as a confirmation of the path that we are on. It's not to rely on this form of connectivity, because eventually what will happen is that everything will become a divinatory tool. Everything will speak to you no different than if you were to pull a card. That's the reason why I call the biblical text and tarot hand in hand for me. When I read the biblical text, words jump off of the page for me. When I pull cards, I am shown things no different than I'm reading the Bible, if you will. Okay, so if you guys have any questions about divination, about practices, if someone's trying to make you feel guilty or whatever the case may be, you can share some of your stories down below. I love engaging with you guys in the comments. I really do feel more connected with you guys when you do that. You have any questions, just let me know. Hit me up down below. If you guys can give this video a thumbs up, as well as leave a comment, like I was saying. Share if you care, if you think this information is important. All of this helps us with our analytics. This is the kickoff to the Tarot, Bible, and Alchemy series, where we will be going through the tarot, the biblical text, as well as alchemy, and how they all go hand in hand, the trifecta. Okay? And we first had to address this so that people that are coming out of that religious mindset or coming out of a certain type of mindset, that they will be able to feel comfortable with receiving this type of information, because we are in 5D now. And so being in 5D means that we are leaving the 3D suppressed mind behind, and that includes the religious mindset and being out of alignment with our self-mastery. If you're interested in joining the family here, hit that subscribe button, as well as the notification bell, so you can receive notifications when we go live and post new information like this. Check out our other playlists here. Thank you guys for those that have given the 613 Higher Wisdom, Higher Knowledge Energetic Exchange, also known as a donation. That link is down below. For those that are interested in giving on a more continual basis, such as the Patreon family over there, thank you guys so much for that. That link is down below. Free energy readings. There is a lot more information where this is coming from. Make sure that you do check out the blog, because there's more information regarding this topic over there. I'm currently working on the website to jazz it up for you guys. Depending on when you're watching this video or listening to this podcast, that the website could already be finished, So I thank you guys once again. This is Ashley, and I'll talk to you guys later. Peace.